The Aftermath, A World Reborn Prologue. The war was over. It had been called the War to End All Wars, but it left the world in shambles. Nations had fallen, cities were reduced to ash, and the survivors were scattered. This was the aftermath of World War III, a conflict that reshaped the world in ways no one could have imagined. Chapter 1. The Last Broadcast. The final broadcast before the blackout was a message of despair. Governments urged their citizens to seek shelter and conserve resources. Nuclear explosions had darkened the skies, and the ensuing fallout created a nuclear winter. Temperatures plummeted, crops failed, and the world was thrust into an extended darkness. In a small bunker beneath what was once New York City, a group of survivors huddled together. Among them was Dr. Eleanor Bennett, a biologist who had worked on sustainable agriculture projects before the war. She knew the key to survival lay in rebuilding the natural world. Chapter 2. The long winter. For months, the survivors relied on stored food and water. The world outside was a frozen wasteland. Communication with other shelters was sporadic, but they managed to establish a network of survivors in different parts of the country. Dr. Bennett began to organize the survivors, using her knowledge to create small indoor gardens to supplement their dwindling food supplies. Life in the bunker was a test of endurance and cooperation. Tensions ran high as the scarcity of resources led to conflicts. But there were also moments of hope. A baby was born, named Hope, symbolizing the potential for a new beginning. Chapter 3. The thaw. 2 years after the war ended, the nuclear winter began to recede. The survivors emerged cautiously from their bunkers. The landscape was unrecognizable. Forests were gone, rivers were poisoned, and the air was still thick with radiation in some areas. Dr. Bennett led an expedition to find a place where they could start anew. They traveled through the ruins of old cities, gathering any useful materials and seeds that had survived the blasts. They encountered other survivor groups, some friendly and willing to trade, others hostile and desperate. The journey was perilous, but they pressed on. Chapter 4. The New Settlement After. Months of searching, they found a valley that had been shielded from the worst of the fallout. The soil was still fertile, and a river ran through it, relatively uncontaminated. They decided to establish a settlement there, naming it New Eden. Dr. Bennett and the other survivors set to work. They used the seeds they had collected to plant crops, and they built shelters from the ruins of nearby buildings. The community grew slowly but steadily. They implemented renewable energy solutions using solar panels and wind turbines salvaged from the old world. Chapter 5. Rebuilding Society. New Eden became a beacon of hope. As word spread, more survivors joined them. They brought skills and knowledge, helping to rebuild a semblance of the society that had been lost. They established schools, clinics, and a council to govern the settlement. Dr. Bennett was elected as the leader, her vision and knowledge guiding them through the difficult times. The community faced many challenges: the threat of radiation, the scarcity of resources, and the trauma of the war. But they persevered, learning to live sustainably and in harmony with their environment. They developed new agricultural techniques, created water purification systems, and rebuilt infrastructure. Epilogue. A new dawn. Years passed, and New Eden flourished. The children born after the war grew up in a world very different from the one their parents had known. They were taught the importance of peace, cooperation, and respect for the environment. Dr. Bennett, now much older, looked out over the fields of New Eden. The sky was clear, the land was green, and the river flowed clean. The horrors of the past were never forgotten, but they had built a new world from the ashes of the old. A world where humanity had learned from its mistakes and vowed never to repeat them. In this new dawn, the survivors of World War III had found hope, resilience, and a path forward. They had proven that even in the darkest times, the human spirit could endure and rebuild.